This is going to be a pretty special video, because in front of me I have the entire iPhone 15 lineup. Shout out to Sonny Dixon for providing these for us. Now, these are in the form of case models. What this means is that they are non-functional units, but since they have been made specifically for case manufacturers, they have the final dimensions including the more rounded frame, the new camera rays, as well as the new buttons. So we'll take a look at all models and see what interesting discoveries we can find. Starting off with the iPhone 15 regular. Holding this in my hand feels so much better than the 14 did. You can see that the 15's frame is indeed more rounded, but only towards the very edges. The middle part of it is still perfectly flat. What this means is that you still get the grip of the 14's flat frame, but you now get a much more comfortable feel in the hand as the edge blends in with the palm of your hand. This more rounded frame also makes it feel thinner in the hand, although we did measure this and it was actually thicker at 8mm as opposed to 7.8 on the 14. Taking a look at the front, we can now see the dynamic island, confirming the rumors that Apple will be bringing it to the regular models too this year. Holding the 14 against the 15, you can see that the 15 is a tiny bit taller, 0.8mm taller to be more precise. The buttons seem to be in the same location and also have the same size, with the only difference being the power button, which is now a tiny bit thinner. And now let's take a look at the camera and see if we are getting the iPhone 14 Pro's 48 megapixel module, like Apple's been doing for the past few years now, putting their Pro camera inside the following base models. And I'm sad to say that according to our measurements, it doesn't seem like we are getting the 48 megapixel module from the 14 Pro, despite leaks also saying that we would. The camera island seems to be identical to the one on the 14 and noticeably smaller to the one on the 14 Pro, whilst also being much thinner. And even when we measured the diameter of the lenses, the numbers were pretty much the same as on the 14, as opposed to the much larger lenses on the 14 Pro. One change from the 14 that we did notice is that the curved glass part of the camera island is now 0.1mm shorter, likely due to the increased thickness of the phone. Interesting enough, the lenses themselves are a bit thicker by 0.1mm, which could either be the cause of the glass part getting thicker, or Apple adding an extra glass layer on the inside to improve the optical clarity of the cameras. Now, something else that's quite interesting is how the glass back now seems to be matte on these case models as opposed to the normal glass that we had before. And there have been some rumors saying that Apple will be adopting a frosted glass back on all 4 models of the iPhone this year. And honestly, having both a matte back and then also a matte frame looks and feels incredible. Yeah, I really wish that Apple did the same on the Pro models, because obviously I'm gonna get a Pro, and yeah, I would love a Pro with this look. Next up, we have the iPhone 15 Plus, and the differences between this and the 14 Plus from last year are quite small. The biggest one being the notch going away and being replaced by the dynamic island. Aside from this, we also get that more rounded frame that we also get on the iPhone 15, which does make it noticeably more comfortable to hold, especially given its larger size. And the 15 Plus is also a bit narrower by 0.5mm, so if you are a fan of this large form factor and you just don't want to spend a fortune on the Pro Max, then the 15 Plus is a really good choice this year, even though the camera module is not changing. Yes, we did measure the lenses and everything, and it seems like it is the same as on the 14 Plus and the 15. With the only difference being that the camera bump itself is a bit shorter, likely due to the phone getting thicker by 0.2mm. Next up, we have the Pro models, and oh, what is this? What is this on the back of the 15 Pro? It is an extra wallet, and they are the sponsor of today's video. Extra is a smart accessories brand specializing in creating better gear for life on the move, such as premium wallets and high-end bags. The Parliament wallet offers a sophisticated approach to your everyday carry, with storage for 1 to 12 cards and quick access slots. The aluminum card holder looks even sleeker, featuring the same 1 to 12 card capacity but with a slimmer profile. Extra is currently running a limited time Father's Day sale, and with the code ZONEofTECH, you'll get 35% off your order. Check Extra out by using the link below. And now moving on to the 15 Pro, this is where we start to see some bigger changes. First, we can see the glossy frame as opposed to the matte frame on the non-Pro models. I should mention that this frame is said to be made out of titanium and be more matte than the stainless steel frame that we've had up until now. Now, this isn't quite visible on the dumb unit, so in this case, I'm assuming they just couldn't get the titanium finish right, and they just kept the previous stainless steel look. But yeah, the final version should look more like titanium on the Apple Watch Ultra. One change that is visible on the case model is when it comes to the height and also the width, with the 15 Pro being about 1mm shorter than the 14 Pro and also narrower by another millimeter. And just holding it in my hand, I gotta say, the 15 Pro feels incredible. Coming from my 14 Pro, this feels so much more comfortable to hold, not just because of that more curved frame, but also because of the narrower body. I can easily reach all 4 corners of the device with just one hand. So yeah, I think this form factor is going to be super popular this year. Now, the 15 Pro is quite a bit thicker, coming in at 8.5mm thick as opposed to 785 on the 14 Pro. But because of those more rounded edges, it feels about the same. Even more comfortable, in fact. The bezels are also getting noticeably thinner on the Pro models, although this isn't quite visible from the case model. Something that is visible, though, are all the button changes. So the power button is now shorter by 1.5mm and also thicker, plus it is noticeably lower as opposed to the 14 Pro, making it easier to reach and also easier to press. It is quite interesting how this only applies to the Pro model and not the regular 15, which still has the higher button. If we take a look at the left-hand side, we can see that the SIM slot has been relocated to almost the bottom of the frame as opposed to the middle of it, like due to some internal changes. And here we seem to have the unified buttons, you know, the ones that got canceled apparently. Well, this case model does seem to show them. Each button is also longer now by about 1mm. You still seem to be able to press them individually, it's just that they are now closer together with this piece in the middle. So it could just be a limitation of the case model, with the release unit having a diving board mechanism where the middle part just holds everything in place. Just as a reminder, that haptic nature of the buttons, that has been pushed to next year, so even if we do get this design, which looks very likely at this point, they will still physically press. We can also see the new redesigned mute switch, which is shorter by about 0.5mm, and just a single button as opposed to the toggle that we've had before, which is still visible on the non-Pro iPhone 15 case models. The speaker grill arrangement is still the same, but this port is large enough to accommodate a USB-C cable. Yes, confirmed, finally. And this applies to all 4 models of the iPhone 15. USB Type-C is indeed coming. So now let's talk about the camera and see what we can expect to see here, as most of the camera leaks have been for the iPhone 15 Pro Max and not the 15 Pro. Probably the most obvious thing here is that the flash is getting smaller, likely due to Apple needing more space inside. Then the LiDAR is also getting smaller, likely thanks to that new module, literally the first new LiDAR module since the iPhone 12 Pro, which should improve its performance too, and not just the size of it. And then the entire camera island is a tiny bit smaller now as well, by about 1mm, which isn't something that we would have expected. Not only that, but the camera bump is also not as noticeable as on the 14 Pro, as it is too shorter by 1.5mm, with the lenses also protruding less now by about 0.5. This might make it seem like Apple's downgraded the whole camera system, but I don't really think that's the case. If anything, they were simply able to reduce the camera bump size by making the entire body thicker, alongside shrinking the flash and the LiDAR. So in the worst case scenario, we would simply get the same cameras as on the 14 Pro, which just by looking at the measurements does seem to add up. And in the best case scenario, we would get that new Sony sensor that has been rumored to improve highlight recovery, but other than that, yeah, don't expect any major camera changes with the 15 Pro. And that's because the big camera changes would be coming to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So here we go, this is the Pro Max. And before I talk about a camera, I want to mention a couple of other unique things that we found. 14 Pro Max on the left and 15 Pro Max on the right. And the 15 Pro Max is noticeably narrower than not just the 14 Pro Max of last year, but also narrower than the 15 Plus and the 14 Plus, making the 15 Pro Max significantly more comfortable to hold than the 14 Pro Max, which was not only overly wide and difficult to hold, but those sharp edges made it even worse. And this was actually the main reason why I did not get the Pro Max, as it was simply too big and too uncomfortable to use. But this year, this will no longer be an issue. And I'm actually quite excited to give the Pro Max a go. This is a major upgrade for anyone who prefers the Pro Max model. And if I put a 14 Pro Max against the 15 Pro Max side by side, you can really tell the difference in width alongside the difference in height, which has also been reduced by 0.8 millimeters. The 15 Pro Max has the same thickness as the 15 Pro at 8.5 millimeters, so 0.5 millimeters thicker than the 15 and the 15 Plus, and also thicker than the 14 Pro Max. But just like the smaller 15 Pro, you cannot really tell the difference in terms of the extra thickness because of that more rounded frame. Which brings us to the camera. So, based on our measurements, the camera is indeed going to be a step up from the 15 Pro. So if I also bring in the 15 Pro, the camera island itself is about 1 millimeter larger than the 15 Pro, and then the camera lenses protrude by about 0.4 millimeters more than on the 15 Pro. Which does make sense due to both the new periscope zoom module as well as that rumored main new sensor, which could approach 1 inch in size. These two, of course, are not that visible on our model, but they have been reported by multiple reliable sources and analysts. So if you're looking for the best camera performance on an iPhone, then the iPhone 15 Pro Max will be the one to get this year. So yeah, do subscribe if you have enjoyed this video, as we'll be making more iPhone 15 related content as soon as we have some updates. And until then, WWDC is happening next week, and we'll actually be doing a live stream. So if you want to watch the WWDC event with us and interact with me and my team, then do set an event into your calendar. I'm Daniel, Team ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH signing out. Cheers.